You're listening to Changing Reality. Changing Reality, where we bend reality all across the world. Only on WQHS Radio.
So, hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Changing Reality. As always, welcome one, welcome all. If you have been returning to our show week in, week out, our heart goes out to you. You guys are the rock stars making this show happen. And if this is your first time watching the show, first of all, where have you been all this time? Like, didn't you know that this is the place to be? And second of all, thank you so much for joining us as well. So for all of you new listeners, Changing Reality is a show that features phenomenal people from all walks of life, who are in essence changing their own reality. And through this show, we have the opportunity to hang out and interview brilliant people from social change makers, entrepreneurs, business owners, industry leaders, executives, to even artists, musicians, and inspiring individuals from all across the world. And many who have spent some time here on the Penn campus as well. And by hearing these inspiring stories on how they managed to essentially change their own reality and chart their courses, hopefully we'll pick up little nuggets of wisdom that will help us shorten our own learning curves and figure out what it is that we love doing and how we can get there. And this is a show that I wanted to do simply because I felt like there are a lot of people out there who do phenomenal things, who make waves in the lives of those around them. And I believe that the secret of us being able to replicate that cannot exactly be, translated into a formula or something that you can read or write, but it's something you have to listen. It's something you have to feel. It's something you have to get from the other person's vibes and their emotion and their lived experiences. So hopefully this show is that avenue for you to tap into some of those experiences, and hopefully those vibes reach you too. I'm very passionate about this show because stories has been the foundation of my own life. And it's been something that has personally helped me in my journey. I'm your host. My name is Harsha, and I'm actually the CEO and co-founder of Ascendance, a social enterprise that I founded in Malaysia 8 years ago with a couple of friends that today collaborates with not just our Malaysian Ministry of Education, but works with over 26 countries to provide an alternative education platform for any student who wants to change their reality. So we've been fortunate to work with elementary to college through students through various sessions, programs, experiential learning activities, and projects. Working with over 50,000 students to date, over 1,000 communities, and have been fortunate to help incubate student-run social enterprises by youngsters as young as 8 to 26 years old, all through the power of stories. And it's because kind people have taken the time to help me out, to help the students that I work with out, that we've been able to achieve all of that. So similarly, I hope that this shows that same platform for you guys, that this is your avenue to listen, learn, and talk about things that you want. So if there are questions or industries that you want to explore or experiences that you want to see how they played out in someone else's life, make sure you let us know, and we'll try to incorporate as much as we can in the show as well. So with that, let's move to our episode for today. We have truly an amazing speaker joining us today, especially because I think one of the biggest, I would say, questions or even conversations that I've been having recently was with a lot of students in finance who wanted to look at the whole industry with a little bit more of an entrepreneurial age. And that entrepreneurial age takes different shapes and forms. And when I heard this person's story, I was absolutely blown away by how he built his own, I would say, corner of the industry almost in a sense. Our speaker today is the president and managing director of Brotman Financial Group, an independent firm assisting clients with wealth creation, preservation, and distribution. He began his financial planning practice in 1994, where he founded Brotman Financial Group in 2023. And he also provides, and with his firm, investment, retirement, estate, insurance, comprehensive financial planning services for families, professionals, executives, and so many others. He also, is a Penn alumni. He actually holds a Bachelor of Arts from Penn as well. And he has been someone who, with years of practitioner, with all his years of experience, actually penned 3 books. One of them that I'm in the process of reading a little bit, and I can tell you it's absolutely amazing. But his work has been, shared to thousands of people through many of his talks, many of his publications. He has, spoken on many news channels. He writes even on Forbes website, and the work that he's done has been featured in print as well by the Wall Street Journal, the Baltimore Sun, even I think Fidelity's Investors Weekly, as well as many other prestigious publications. He was recognized as one of Maryland's power players by the Gazette of Politics and Business in 2010, and was named one of the very important professionals by the Daily Record in 2011. Without further ado, let's welcome our phenomenal guest speaker onto our virtual stage, welcoming Eric.
Hi, Harsha. So good to be here. This is a pleasure. Anytime I get to connect with the University of Penn, I always look forward to it.
Well, thank you so much. Hopefully your week's been going well. Any zombie apocalypses, weather issues?
No, in fact, this is today, as we record this, is my last day in the office for a couple of weeks. So I'm going to enjoy some of my summer away from these four walls. So it's actually a great day for me. You picked a great day. I'm in a perfect place.
Well, I'm glad you have some time off in the summer as well. It's always good to enjoy the hours in the sun, which I never realized because, I grew up in a place that's sunny all the time. So when I first, I think, had a little bit of cold air in Philly, I began appreciating summer a lot more. So it's really nice that you get some time off as well. One of the conversations that I think we've been having in our previous discussion was about, reflecting, especially because I think you were sharing about a very interesting Penn tradition that I didn't know about, which was the fact that during the graduation walk, and I think we just had our convocation and graduation for our senior class, like I think 2 weeks ago, so not long at all. You mentioned that the class of 25 years past and 50 years past actually walks with the current graduating class. Insane tradition. Did you know about it when you were that student walking down graduation, or how did you even find out about that?
Absolutely not. I didn't find out until our 25th was approaching, and they said, "Would you like to don cap and gown and walk again?" That's the way we do it. And we must have had 20 or 30% or more of our class arrive. I mean, it was really unbelievable. There were people I saw at our 25th reunion who I hadn't seen since graduation, and then there are other folks who I see all the time. I've stayed in touch with a lot of the folks from Penn. But walking again, it meant so much more to me the second time than it did the first time. The first time, yes, it's a rite of passage, but it was a little anticlimactic. It was sort of like, yay, I did it, but what's next? Whereas this time I could really sort of soak it in and enjoy every bit of the program. And it was a very, very hot day. And we're in the black cap and gown, and it was an incredibly hot day for our 25th, which is fair because the day I graduated, it was pouring and freezing cold. And so there were all kinds of IT glitches, like there were all kinds of issues with the microphone and the speakers because of the rain at Franklin Field. And so I really got to relive it, and I loved every bit of it.
Okay, I'm gonna embarrass you a little bit, put up some of the photos in a sense. Oh my gosh, so many people actually managed to turn up for that. That's insane and very, very cool. We've got a little close-up of you as well, okay, carrying the flag literally for your classmates, which is really cool. And I think the main question, looking back now, and I know people normally end with this question, but I thought it's a nice way to start. If you could travel back in time and tell yourself something on the first day when you were a freshman stepping into, Penn, what would that one thing, time traveler, you say?
I would tell myself that I belong here and that I found my family and I found my home. When I arrived at Penn, I walked around campus and felt like perhaps every human there was smarter than I was. I had this weird self-deprecating situation for the first couple of weeks, really, where I said, "Oh my gosh, how did I get here? What am I doing here? These people are brilliant, and do I belong?" And over the course of my college career, I found out not only did I belong, but I was welcome and I was home. And it's one of the strongest communities I've ever been a part of. And lifelong friends have come out of that. And And the stories are great, but they're still being made. I mean, not a day goes by that I don't have a text or a phone call or an email or some communication or some communication with someone I graduated with, literally every day.
No, very cool. I wish my friends replied my messages now a little bit more, but hopefully they'll be doing that for years to come. Tell me a little bit about how you were like a little bit before you were in Penn. Why choose Penn in the first place? Amazing school, great and all of that, but why did it resonate with you?
Part of it was the first time I stepped on campus. I did the tour, like many people. I did the tour of Penn and Princeton the same day. And Princeton was first. And my father took me to all kinds of schools, and we visited schools in Chicago and Boston and Philly and all over the place. And when I stepped on Princeton's campus and we were in the middle of the tour, literally 10, 15 minutes into the tour, I said, I'm not going here, let's leave. And we walked off the tour and left because it was just not home. It didn't feel welcoming. It didn't feel, everything about it made me uncomfortable. I didn't like anything to do with it. And when I set on my foot on Penn's campus for the first time, I'm on Locust Walk, and it was a beautiful day, and there was a lot of activity on the walk. And I remember looking at my dad, and I remember saying, this is where I'm going. This is home. This is where I want to be. And my father, and I'll embarrass him now because he might see this show, in his infinite wisdom, he channeled all the fatherly advice he could come up with, and he said, you'll never get in. So, and I love that story because I was like, watch me, here we go. And so I said, hey, thanks for that pep talk. Why are we here if you really believe that? I'm going here and we're going to make this happen. So it was a lifelong ambition, not only to go to an excellent school, but to really be part of the community. And I was able to do that.
I can imagine, the drive you must have felt with all the parental support and encouragement from the story.
Oh yeah, you can do it. Now you'll absolutely
right on the spot and be like, college is not for me, but yeah. But I appreciate that. But I like what you said in the beginning. You go into Penn and there's just all these really brilliant people. Everyone seems to be top of their class, top of everything in a sense. I remember getting in and thinking, oh man, they definitely made a mistake with me here. For you, in a sense, like, what was the moment that you started really finding your groove in Penn? And at the same time, what was the moment that you started really seeing the benefit of the community versus the competition? I think this is something we touched on briefly previously, but we didn't get to spend too much time on. But I feel like many people come in with a competitive mindset versus that collaborative mindset.
Yeah, I never felt competition. I know there's some people who do, and I know there's some majors and some programs that are a little bit more cutthroat, for lack of a more graceful term. I never felt that. I would say that the moment when I realized I belonged at Penn was the moment that I joined the DP staff, because I found my first sort of sub-community. Because Penn's a large place. I graduated in a class of 50 from high school. So Penn it might as well have been Ohio State at that point. It was huge to me. And I love the fact that it was a small enough school that I knew someone in every class I took, and a large enough school that I met new people every day. Like, that felt like the perfect size. But what I will say is that joining the DP was the first time I felt like I'd found the first part of my tribe. And that was something that was important to me for my 3.5 years that I was there. And I would say from a social standpoint, yes, you're close with your freshman floor mates and you share some things, and we had a great time. But I think it was probably when I joined the Greek system that I felt like now I have another group, a social outlet. So I had this sort of professional outlet, a social outlet, and then an academic outlet within the English department at Bennett Hall. And it was the perfect combination. I had very different groups that didn't always merge or interact with each other. But that was partly a great thing because I really got to know a lot of other folks. And now you're really going to embarrass me. That was a very long time ago.
But, I mean, they're good photos. Like we have all the different friend groups.
Yeah. No, we were a handsome lot. For sure.
Right out of a movie, all of you.
Well, yes, the Breakfast Club. Yes.
Oh wow. I'm gonna like send that photo to someone, say like, have you watched The Breakfast Club, and see if they can tell the difference.
Yeah, that's
But
us.
uh, yeah, but like, moving out of Penn, a lot of people talk about community and the importance that it brings to, like, someone's career, someone's like well-being, somebody's happiness in a sense. But I feel like, we being in college right now take that for granted in a sense. When did you start feeling like, as a professional, the importance of having that community? You started off, I think, on the trading floor, then you started, in very entrepreneurially, your own firm in a sense. At what point you think, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I have this community. Oh my gosh, I love
I actually created my own because I couldn't find one. So back in 1995, when masterminds weren't a thing, I started a group with a group of other professionals that we called Mastermind. I'm sorry I didn't trademark it, actually. But in 1995, we created this group, and it was a group of young professionals in different industries locally. And the idea was we could learn from each other, we could grow together, and we could eventually have those kinds of professional / personal relationships where I was always jealous of the folks who said, oh, I've been working with so-and-so for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever. And we couldn't fake that. We couldn't, there's no way to fake that. You either have or you haven't. And so we created this group for young professionals. I'm pleased to say that almost 30 years later, we are all still the dearest friends. We don't meet for young professional needs anymore. Now we have dinner a couple times a year, and it's wonderful. We're dear friends. But it was a way, with the idea was that within that group, we would know everything, or we'd be 1 or 2 degrees of separation from someone who knew everything. It was kind of like a social network before social networking was a thing. And so I feel a little bit lucky that idea came to me. And I take no credit necessarily for the idea of bringing people together. We've been doing that for millennia. But the idea that we could draw on each other's expertise, we could teach each other, we could learn from each other, it was a really valuable thing. And so I created my own community because there really wasn't one. I was a 22-year-old professional in a world where there were very few people my age. In fact, even today, the financial advisory community, the average financial advisor in this country is 60 plus. And if you're in school and you want to do personal finance for a living, it is not an easy career path to find, because unlike law school or getting an accounting degree or med school, or there's some paths that are largely linear. And the path into this profession is not linear. In fact, it's a winding road in a lot of different ways. And so you have to figure it out in almost on your own. It really does have to be entrepreneurial in a sense.
No, very cool. One of my best friends is in the or aspires to be a financial planner in a sense, or at least in personal finance. And one of the things that she was just telling me over lunch the other day was that there's so many qualifications, there's so many like different examinations, different regulations, each state is different. And she was saying that there's no one, like it's not law school, it's not like a very set path of like you do this, you do that, you do this. You have to think about these things really go on the get-go in a sense. But credit to you and people who figured that out, because like for a lot of people going out of Penn, I think for some reason wealth management is not at the top of their mind in a way. So a lot of them they go into IB or traditional finance. What inspired you, or why wealth management in the first place at 22 years old? Like it's very different from what most people in the industry would be thinking about.
It was a complete accident, Harsha. A complete accident. I graduated. I came into Penn thinking economics and business, and I graduated with a BA in English, 1 class shy of a minor in psychology. So it was an English and psychology background, and took a job at a brokerage firm, a major home office of a brokerage firm here locally in Baltimore, and fell in love with the brokerage business. Now, I was in the legal department. My plan was to go to law school, because all English majors either teach or go to law school, or they write poetry under a tree somewhere. But generally, you're going to teach or you're going to go to law school. So I was planning on law school. And so I took a job. I was in the legal department, and I was responsible at the time, at a young age, for dealing with some trauma. When when someone died, when someone lost a family member, how do we help people deal with that? And I was dealing with it on a very operational level. What affidavits need to be notarized? What legal documents do you need to get? How does this work? And I was speaking, they actually had me going around the country speaking to other offices and talking to the financial advisors about what to do when they lose a client, when a client dies. And what I found was that I was dealing with people bereaving and I couldn't really help them. The damage was done. Somebody had already died. There was no way to plan. So I had to be the one to tell folks, I'm sorry you lost your husband, but his ex-wife is still his beneficiary. And those kinds of conversations are not okay. It happens all the time. People will accidentally leave money to one child instead of all three because they never changed the paperwork after they had the second child. It happens all the time, or something that they thought was joint wasn't, or there's so many different nuances to it, to the estate planning side. And so I thought, well, estate law was something I had thought about, but I loved the financial piece. I loved the idea that if I could get ahead of this and help folks plan for this so that when the inevitable happened, they could grieve and they could go through the things they needed to go through personally and emotionally and with their family without worrying about were the T's crossed, were the I's dotted, did we do what we had to do? Because now it's too late. So I took the LSATs, I applied to law schools, I got into law schools, I paid a deposit at a law school, and then I didn't go. I literally ate a deposit for law school and said, you know what, this is not my path. And not a day goes by that I'm not thankful for that. That was a blessing because I love what I'm doing, and I feel like I'm making a difference. And I am an accredited estate planner and I do speak lawyer. I'm just not able to do documents. I didn't go to law school. I do the financial side, but we work with a ton of lawyers all over the country because I go to their conferences, I go to the estate planning meetings, and I understand that work. And so I become an ally. And you talked a little bit ago about collaboration over competition. I go to places where I am no one's competition. I've been to University of Miami Law has a conference every year called the Heckerling Institute. There are 3,000 people there. I can count on my fingers how many are financial advisors. We are no one's, honestly, we are no one's competition. We can collaborate with everyone there. And so being sort of that outlier creates not only opportunity, but curiosity. Like, oh, you're a financial advisor. Why are you at our conference? And that kind of communication makes me different than the masses immediately.
No, that's first of all really good business advice, like top tier in a sense. Write that down, and like you could have like a whole like book number 5 on that right now. But I do want to also just circle back on what you said of how you started thinking about getting into the financial planner industry, because it's so important. And I know this can sound slightly morbid in a sense, but I had a recent tragedy in the family where I had to go and do all the, not me, but my sister and I had to go and do all the documentation and all the legal and all of that. And people don't want to be thinking about that too much when they're grieving. It kind of messes up the grieving period in a way.
Yes.
But it is so important because it literally changes lives, and it literally is like such a big milestone that people don't really think about. So everyone go check your stuff at the very least. Check where you like you did your last updates and everything. That's like my advocacy that I tell everyone, like when I bump into them like at a law firm, which I'm never at, but like when I bump into them at like a government office, I'm like, did you check all of these things that you said you would? So very important point. You started off very young in this field, and one of the things that personally as an entrepreneur who started young as well-ish, one of the things that I've always faced is getting people to look at me with some level of credibility. And I'm not handling people's finances, I'm not handling their estates, I'm not handling their lives at the very least. So you definitely had it much tougher than I did. So how was it like those first few months and years establishing that credibility and getting people to understand and take you at your value?
I can share a couple answers to that because it was extremely challenging because I was 22, but I looked 14. Like I looked like somebody's grandkid walked in, and I still have like some collateral from back in the day, and my picture, I look like somebody's kid. It's like, are you in 8th grade or are you our financial advisor? So it was important to establish credibility. And when you're building a career in anything, before you can be a true influencer and make a difference, you have to become a true authority. And so I grabbed every piece of education I could. I grabbed, you talk about all the different designations and exams and licenses. I took more exams in the 5 years, 10 years after college than I ever did in high school and college combined. I mean, alphabet soup. My bio today has alphabet soup in it, most of which I don't even care about, other than at the time, it allowed me to make sure, even though I looked young, I knew what I was talking about. I could do the academic side, I could do the intellectual side, even if I hadn't experienced these things. It's tough to counsel somebody on how emotional it might be to sell the family home if you've never owned a home and you've never done those things, or what it's like to get married, or what it's like to have children, or what it's like to change careers or to move to another country or another city. I had not experienced any of those kinds of things and was trying to be empathetic, but also trying to be an authority. And so I could understand the financial aspects of it. I had to learn the human aspects of it. And that's the hard part. It's not the IQ, it's the EQ, that social intelligence that you have to have in order to be relatable at any age. And, I might not have been taken seriously when I walked into the room, but I was taken seriously by the time I walked out of the room. And so that was a big deal. I also did things very non-traditionally to build my career, because I did not want to be that person who hung a shingle and said, "Hey, I'm a financial advisor now. I wasn't 3 days ago, but today I am, and now I'm going to call all my friends and ask them to invest with me." Like that, I don't want to get those phone calls from somebody. I'm never making those phone calls. So I learned a couple of things that I could do to build not only my authority, but then my influence. I learned seminars and I gave talks. I learned how to work trade shows, and I went and shook hands with hundreds of people. I joined every business association within 30 square miles and got on their membership committees or ambassadors committees. I met people every day. I didn't eat alone. Instead of having lunch at my desk, I would be at a brown bag meet and greet somewhere, anywhere. And so I became sort of that guy. In fact, I'll tell you a story that you didn't hear in our pre-show. At one point in the mid 90s, as a 22, 23-year-old guy, I was the only male member of the Executive Women's Network of Baltimore. There were 400 women and me. This is true. This is true. And it was an amazing experience. I was asked by one of my mastermind colleagues to come to this, and I thought she was kidding. I'm like, I can't go to that. That's not for me. She said, just come, it'll be fun. And I showed up at this event. There were 100+ people there. I was the only male there. And I walked in, and first of all, what was amazing was I knew 20 or 30 people because I had known, like, from different walks of life. And secondly, I was a curiosity. People walked up to me. I never left the front entryway of this establishment because I couldn't get into the room because people were wanting to, why are you here? How does this work? And so it turns out not only could I join, but I was asked to chair their corporate membership committee to raise money and create opportunities for sponsors. I then sat on their board. So I'm in a boardroom. There's 18 people in there. I'm the only guy in the room. And, I've done podcasts. There's a podcast I was on called The Only One in the Room, where I was the curiosity, being sort of the outlier in that space. But I think for months, I'd go into a grocery store here, and somebody would walk up to me, a complete stranger, go, "You're that guy." Yes, I'm that guy. I'm that guy. And I wasn't there for nefarious reasons. I was there because I was doing business. And Harsha, I don't have to tell you this because you already know this, but men and women do business differently. They make decisions differently. They make executive decisions differently, not better, worse, just differently. And by learning some of that, and I know I'm painting with a broad brush and I can get in trouble for that, but in general, I'm a believer that women make better financial advisors than men do. Because I believe most of this job is relational, and being someone who not only is trustworthy and knowledgeable, but also can relate. And so our office, in an industry that is 88% men, our office is more than 50% female, our advisors. And our next CEO, my succession plan, I will turn the reins over here to a female CEO. And that is not because I'm trying to change the world from a gender perspective. It's because she's going to be awesome at this. And because our firm has become different. The average advisor is 60 plus, and ours, I'm the old guy in the office. I'm 51. Don't tell anyone. But I'm the old guy. We have advisors in their 20s and 30s who are learning how to do this the right way, who aren't calling their friends and trying to sell something. They're learning the business. They're getting educated. They're working with existing clients, and I'm doing the influencing. They're getting the authority, and we've built this unbelievable, very diverse, very young, very different organization. We don't look like everybody else. We're not competing even for some of the same clients. Like, we're in a space where there's really no competition. And I feel like I shouldn't share any more secrets because I don't want anyone to copy this.
I'm copying this. And
you can copy it just between us.
But that's actually really smart. And again, like, I'm just saying, book 5, I'll read it. Like, everyone watching this will read it, in the sense how to be the only person. But no, very cool. And I think like I have many questions, but I'm going to start with this. So I like how you mentioned, in that beginning, it's a role and a position where, a lot of it is relationship based. And earlier you mentioned, when you're just starting out, you may not have the same shared experiences that your clients may be having. Again, I have no authority to talk about anything finance, but in my experience, in a sense, that process of going out as an entrepreneur or as someone who's meeting clients or just meeting people in general is so important, because those conversations is what helps me understand the people that will eventually become my clients better, that will eventually become the people I serve better. But often, that's something that we understand looking backwards. Looking forwards, in a sense, you're like, why am I meeting so many people? I've met, I've gone for this event, I haven't still slept in a week. And nobody signed up like in the last month, in a sense. And this is something that I hear with a lot of the people that I work with, in a sense, who are also just starting out. You work with a young team as well, so I'm sure you've heard this at least once or twice from maybe the newer ones who come in a sense.
Yeah.
How do people manage that phase? Because what they don't understand, that's kind of the planting of the seed phase. You don't have to close the sale, you don't have to do the 100%. You just have to learn, and you have to show up, and you have to be there. But again, that's something that makes sense looking backward. So how did you manage it when you were there, and how do you coach people who maybe are there now, in a sense, to kind of get through the ringer?
I learned it through trial and error, like just about everything else. I really didn't have, it wasn't until I was in the industry for almost 4 or 5 years that I found a mentor. And it was really a big deal for me to find a mentor who was 10 years more experienced than I was doing some similar things, and who was willing to take me under his wing. And not because he necessarily taught me everything, but because I was able to watch him do what he did. And he was a master at it. He's still a master at it, actually. And so I was able to join him in starting an organization. And we spent 4 years together, and I learned so much from him. In fact, I spoke with him yesterday. Like, we're still, I don't burn a lot of bridges, Harsha. I know a lot of people, and I communicate with people all the time, and I think that makes a difference. It's also really, really important to learn at a very young age authenticity. That whole fake it till you make it and strut around like, boy, I really know what I'm doing and I know everything, is such a turnoff to everyone. It's so much better to say, I do not know the answer to that question, but darn it, I'm going to find out, and I'm going to make sure it's right. And if you tell someone that, they're going to feel a confidence level much better than if you fake it and make a mistake, or even if you're right on the off chance. Just be authentic, be yourself, and people will either like you and trust you and want to do business with you, or they won't, and that's okay. You talked about meeting lots of people. Not all of them are going to become friends, or going to become clients, or going to become centers of influence, or going to be, some of them you'll never see again. And some of them you'll be at their wedding in 5 years, and you just don't know. But, to your credit, you said that most of it is showing up. I think at least 50%, if not more, is showing up. You will always miss the opportunities you don't take. Always. And sometimes it's good to say no. As you get older, and as you get, now I have to say no to things. And it's one of the most important things I can do, is to say no. And, for example, when I was young in my career, I thought it was important to golf. seemed like something that was important. And I hate golf, absolutely hate it. And not only do I hate it, it hates me. And no, you've never seen a worse golfer in your life. It's a cartoon waiting to happen. And so I finally said, you know what? I've got young people in this office who would love nothing more than to attend a golf outing. If we get invited to something, I can send somebody from BFG. I don't have to go. I gave my clubs to charity for the good of the game. I will never play again unless there's a windmill, and that's just the way it's going to be. So you do things because you think you have to. This is what I do. I have to join a club, or I have to be a member of this, or I have to wear a certain suit and tie. And boy, oh boy, I spent money on clothes I shouldn't have spent back in the day because this dress to success thing felt like it mattered. The beauty of COVID, and one of the positives of COVID, is none of us care anymore. I haven't worn a tie in 3-4 years. And it's okay. And our team doesn't wear ties, and our clients don't expect us to be dressed like Manhattan bankers. That's just not who we are. It was phony to an extent. You felt like, well, you dress for the role you want. Well, what role do I want? Bank teller? No. I want to be relatable. I want to be somebody that I can spend time with. And I want to be authentic. And so I think faking it is not the way to go. The secret to success is not a secret. The secret to success is showing up. It's being yourself. It's being transparent. It's falling on your sword when you make a mistake. It's things that they're not, they don't feel like gospel in some way, but they're just true.
I think that's very true in a sense. Someone told me this in an event, or they didn't tell me, I listened to it in an event in a sense, but it stuck with me, which is people don't do what actually makes them successful because they think it's too simple. It's just repetitive and it's boring. Everyone wants, the get rich quick, the pill that will make them a billionaire in a sense. Yeah. But in a sense, I think that's not exactly the way to go when we're looking at, long-term planning and all of that. Mm-hmm. For you, in a sense, especially in your experiences, I noticed that you seem to, at the same time, not only be authentic, but at the same time, do things boldly, do things that other people would not do. Show up at different events, show up at different conferences, show up at different places in a way. When you're the only one doing something differently, do you ever feel a sense of, oh my gosh, am I doing the right thing? Or have you ever in your career felt like, oh my goodness, am I sure about this in a sense? And how do you counter those, or how do you essentially address those thoughts so that you can remain focused, remain on point, and go ahead?
It's funny. The last time I felt that uncomfortable was my first couple of weeks at Penn. It's been 30 years. The last time I was that uncomfortable and I felt like I didn't belong was that story I already told. Since then, nothing else scares me. It's kind of like once you've done that, once you've surrounded yourself in a big community of really bright people, and you've allowed yourself to not only adapt and fit in, but also to be an outlier in different ways, because you don't want to be all the same. That's no fun. I think since that time, I've been very comfortable in my own skin. And people will either like me or not, Harsha, and it's okay. I'm not everyone's jam, and that's fine. But for the folks who like the energy that I bring to the table, I get invited to some very cool things. I feel a little bit like Forrest Gump.
That's not the comparison I would have made, but okay.
No, not because I'm not a smart man, but I feel a little bit like Forrest Gump because my life, I have been involved in and done things no one does just by being there. For example, I was in Dallas at a place called Gillies, and there was a Grammy nominee, Pat Green, singing on stage. And I was in the front of the show, and I was just chatting with him, and he invited me up, and I sang his hit song with him. And so I can now say I've sung on stage at a major Texas theater with a 2-time Grammy nominee. There's video to prove it, which I will not send you. You have to research it. But that's just something that doesn't happen. Like, what do you mean he called you up on stage and you sang his song with it? That's the kind of stuff that happens to me. And so I think like Forrest Gump, I wind up in these places just by being there. And I wind up on stage over here, or I wind up being the one called on to do various things. And my life has been a really, really rich experience. And I don't mean rich financially. I mean rich spiritually and rich culturally and rich from really from the time I arrived at Penn. It was not that way in high school. I went to a high school where everyone looked like me. We were all the same. And I showed up at Penn, and Penn was a completely different experience in all the right ways. And what I learned there, and the friends that I made there, and the cultures I experienced there, and the people, and the warmth of it, changed my life.
The question I have is, today you have a team, you have amazing people that work with you, and they may not have had that experience of like, because I understand Penn is just a weird environment in a sense. Everyone gets something different, but at the same time, you kind of get in the same vibe. Like for me, what Penn taught me is like, it's okay not to be the smartest or brightest person in the room. You can just be you. Like you don't have to like be like number one at everything all the time. It's actually fun not to be, in a sense, and have conversations with the people who are the number one. But like, not everyone has that kind of really, I would say, high pressure dynamic and fun environment that they kind of go through, in a sense. How do you replicate elements of that in your team when you started building out a team, or at least replicated the elements that they would need to kind of develop the mindset to actually succeed? Because a lot of what you're saying, it's not necessarily like, yes, skills are really important, but it's also, the EQ part. It's also the way you're thinking about opportunities, the way you're kind of positioning yourself, which comes really from kind of the internal way that the ideas are being structured and formed and kind of brought out in your mind. So how do you get other people to think, in this dynamic way that you do?
The first thing you have to do is you have to surround yourself with people who are different. People who have different interests, different skills, different backgrounds. That, I think, is incredibly important. For me, I wanted to surround myself with people who were great at and loved doing the things I wasn't great at or didn't love doing. Surround yourself with people who love to do the stuff you don't want to do, and maybe who don't want to do the stuff that you're great at, and suddenly you have synergies. Back in the day when we were in school, it was always about working on whatever you were weakest at. If you were a great mathematician, they would literally hammer you with English and Spanish and whatever else. Why not play to your strengths? So today in 2023, education's changed to now where we're saying, instead of getting adequate at everything, be great at something. Really own it. And so I think for us professionally, I think the same thing is true. If you develop a niche or a market or a voice or a talent or something that makes you the go-to in your organization, whether it's an organization of 5 people or 5,000 people, doesn't matter. If you're the go-to, if you're the one where they say, get Harsha, this is a Harsha question, then you're invaluable. And it doesn't matter in what industry it is. But if we all have the same skill sets, if you put me in a room of 5 people, all of whom have the same skill set, personality, like doing the same stuff as me, we'd have a lot of people fighting over the roles we wanted and dreading the ones that we didn't, and stuff would fall through the cracks. There were things we wouldn't do. And so I do a lot of consulting for financial advisory firms. And when I do, I build what I call the joy and profit matrix. It's the simplest thing in the world. It's literally a 2x2 quadrant. What brings you joy? What brings you revenue? What doesn't bring you joy? What doesn't bring you revenue? And then we put everything you're doing in those places. And ideally, you would spend your entire day doing things that you love to do that also make money, or that also bring success to the organization. But if I had my second choice, I would rather do things I love doing that aren't particularly profitable than do things that are profitable but I can't stand. And so how do we find people who love to do what we don't love to do and then get out of their way? Now, I've got great people here. We have 21 people currently, and they all have skill sets different than mine, and they've picked up some of my nuances, but they've also seen other senior level folks who've been here 10, 12 plus years, and they develop their own voice. I tell all of the young people we hire, please don't try to be me. It's exhausting. Don't do it. Be you and be great at it. It is so hard, so exhausting to be someone else. Just be you and be great. And so I think when you're building a team, you need to find people who fill in each other's gaps. You don't need everyone to have the exact same strength. I mean, it doesn't matter what you're doing, whether you're doing tug of war or rowing, or whether you're building a surgical team, or whether you're building a construction crew, whatever you're doing, if if you're going to go build a house and you have 5 people who are going to do it and they're all carpenters, you're going to have a problem.
You know what? Take that matrix, and instead of writing a book, you should just come teach at Penn. Like as a psychology student, that's like a much more helpful matrix than like half the things that the DYDX we have going on half the time.
I'm happy to do it. If Penn is listening, I'm delighted to come and be faculty. That would be fun. I would love it.
All right, we'll put that in by next week. I'll send this to some people.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that I really loved what you said. Have that community of people and make sure they're different from you.
Yes.
One of the things that and not just different on the surface, but also different in thought and skill and the way they approach things.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in that so much. I think I fail at practicing that at times in a way, because I've been blessed that some of the people I work with are very different from me in their own unique ways. I feel sometimes I don't necessarily listen as much as I should, and you have a job that naturally requires you to listen a lot, and as well as with being having run such a successful organization, having done everything that you've done, I feel that you're a much better listener than I am. So tell me, how do we start listening? That's the question, really.
I think the first step is to make sure you're listening properly. That means don't be listening, waiting for your turn to speak, because at that point you're already paying attention to what your retort is going to be. Life is not a debate, thank goodness. So instead of sitting there thinking about when is it my turn to speak because I'm going to blow this person up, instead, just take it in and acknowledge when you're listening that there is extremely rare circumstances where someone is speaking to you, particularly in a professional context, where they literally have nothing to add or are not going to be helpful in any way. I mean, I can't think of too many times where that's happened in life. People will come to the table with their perspectives. It's important to listen. It's important to have stakeholder groups. I think it's really important to surround yourself with lots of different kinds of stakeholder groups. So for example, that mastermind group I talked about, every young professional ought to do something like that. And I don't mean just be in a group of young engineers. Be in a group of younger, generally people who are in different walks of life, but also have that engineers group if that's what you do for a living. That's a different stakeholder group. That's a study group. So I have a study group with financial advisors, and we learn from each other, and we don't consider each other competition. We share with each other. We learn from each other. We grow together. We're going through some of the same stuff. There's a reason why, whether it's cancer patients talking to each other about their shared experience, or whether it's CEOs talking about their shared experience, if you have those things in common, congregate with people who are willing to share with you and listen to them. Listen to them. They've experienced a lot of the same things you have, and maybe they've dealt with them better than you did or differently. And so stakeholder groups, they matter. That means have a group of young professionals. It means have a group of folks in your industry. It means have a group of people who are an advisory board to you. So for us, we started an advisory board for BFG 15 years ago. And most of the advisory board members are clients, but some are not. Some are other professionals in different walks of life. And we meet twice a year, and it's not a boondoggle. It's not an excuse to have a steak and a glass of wine. We actually do some work together, and they tell us what we need to hear. Because I do not know what it is like, really, to be a client of my own firm. I have a financial advisor within these walls. My wife and I meet with a different financial advisor because it's good to have an accountability partner, and people are going to see things in your plan that you won't see in your own. Kind of like a writer, an author can't edit his or her own work because your brain is going to see the stuff you meant to say, even though that's not what's on paper. You need it to be read by someone else. Same thing's true financially. And our advisory board will tell us what it's like and how we can do a better job communicating. Have you ever put an email or a text together and you send it to somebody and you think it's brilliant and they completely misread it, or the tone wasn't right, or it happens every day?
World War III, yeah.
Happens every day. And so what you meant to say, even if you said it, the words are on paper. If it's taken in a different context or in a different way, it doesn't work. So if you're messaging, and we message constantly, we want to know that those messages are hitting home and that they're resonating and that that's what people want. So I'll give you an example of one of the things our advisory board did for us, which I love. We have no collateral pieces here. A lot of businesses have that brochure that here's us. And because we're as dynamic and as we are, that was a hard thing to do. But we said, you know what, we have to do it. It seems like you have to have a leave behind. So we hired people. We spent a bunch of time. We worked on this thing. We wordsmithed to the comma and the semicolon. And we brought them to the advisory board. We printed a couple hundred of them. When we brought them to the advisory board, and we said, what do you think? And every single person in that room said they're garbage. We're like, what? They said, they sound like everybody else. They don't tell your story nearly the way you can. We get 3 of these in the mail from total strangers every week, and we throw them away. Don't let these see the light of day. And we took the whole box that we'd spent enormous time, some money, some effort on, and we threw them away. They never saw the light of day. If there's one out there, don't tell anyone. But that was great advice. That saved us from making what could have been a very big mistake because we couldn't see our own experience.
Absolutely brilliant. And, I'm very sad that, we're towards the end of our interview. I should have expected it. After 3 books, if anyone still wants more, go and buy the book, read it. Like I'm sure there's still 1 or 2 like in Penn bookstore. I'll check later. But no, very cool. You touched on so many important things, as a financial advisor, as I say entrepreneur because you just have a very entrepreneurial spirit and journey and story and as a whole. And also as an individual in any industry, in any stage of life that is looking to build their career, build, their space in their industry. But I think, one thing that I just wanted to talk about is you also mentioned about kind of thinking about what's next. So whether that's, giving back your wisdom to the community, whether it's, looking at your succession plan in a sense, all of those are things that, probably as a wealth advisor, you think more about it than the rest of us in a sense. But, for the rest of us, we never think too far ahead, I feel, especially when you're a college student. But, at the same time, anything can happen at any point in time. We don't know what decisions wait, what adventures wait. How do we cultivate that habit, or to kind of end this off? How do we start thinking about the future? Whether that's, not necessarily from a financial sense, but from a self sense.
Such a good question. I love this question, and it's a great way to sort of close our conversation, I think. The whole premise of the book and what we do and the podcast that I host is not to retire. It's don't retire, graduate. And the idea that we're moving towards something, not away from it, that we don't want to retreat and disappear. We want to find something amazing for the next chapter of our lives. So I will give you 2 pieces of advice and the viewers 2 pieces of advice to use just in general, other than, buy the book and check things out. But the advice is, number 1, you have to start where you are. You must start with inventory, whether it's financially or whether it's your skill set or whether it's your life. You have to be real with yourself. We all have a map. It's a journey to somewhere. And all of us have that ridiculous sticker right in the middle of the map that says you are here, like a kiosk somewhere. And we have to know where that is and be honest with ourselves. Where is that sticker? It's okay. This is not a judgmental thing, but know where you are, because until you know where you are, you have no way to know where you're going or how you're going to get there. And the second thing I would do is I ask every single person on our show, and I would ask you, but I don't want to put you on the spot at your show. We ask everyone what they want to be when they grow up. And these are successful humans at every age. And when you ask someone 73 what they want to be when they grow up, they look at you funny. Because the last time someone asked them the question, they were 8 and they wanted to be an astronaut or play pro sports. So what do you want to be? And by that, I don't mean what you want to do. As American people, and this might be true worldwide, but it's definitely true in the US, when people talk about who they are, they start with what they do. Tell me about yourself. Oh, I'm an architect. I'm an engineer. No, that's what you do. Who are you? And so until you can figure out who you are and who you'd like to be, it's incredibly difficult to whether it's financial or social or emotional or any of the other ways that we can measure this. All the coaches come into play. Whatever you're trying to measure, if that's what you're trying to do, figure out where you are and what you want to be when you grow up and go get it. And by the way, it will change. Your answer at 25 might be very different than your answer at 35 or 45, and that's okay. We don't have to figure it out. It's ridiculous to think that we show up on a college campus at 18 and we're supposed to declare a major. Man, I'm still trying to figure out where the laundry is. Let me figure out how I'm going to navigate this stuff. Let me figure out how I'm going to figure out how to take care of myself and how to adult. I have no idea at 18 what I wanted to do professionally. I know that I knew that I did a skill inventory, and I think I mentioned this to you in one of our earlier chats. But there's an organization called Johnson O'Connor Research Center that does full batteries of aptitude tests, 2-day batteries of tests. This is not Myers-Briggs. This is not DISC. This is not. It is. What's that?
Sorry, no, not a BuzzFeed quiz. Those dumb.
No. This is a legitimate inventory of skills. And whether you do it at 14 or you do it at 44, your answers will be the same. It's literally hardwired. It's who you are. And it helps you figure out not only what you'll be good at, but what you'll enjoy. And that goes back to that matrix. You find something you love to do that you're good at, and you can not only make a difference, but it'll never feel like work. This isn't work. I love this.
That's beautifully said. And I think you wrapped up the show much better than I ever could. I think you really brought home the whole changing reality element for that. So thank you so much. I'm going to do a little soul searching, and if it ends in tears, I'll send you the bill for therapy. But no, thank you. I really do appreciate every single thing that you said, all of your experiences. I think you're not only a good listener, but you're good at kind of taking that information and sharing it with us in a way that not only makes us want to listen, but makes us want to reflect. And that's not easy to do. So I really appreciate you taking the time and the wisdom to spend this last hour with us. So I hope you had as much fun as we did listening to you, and really appreciate you being on the show.
It was wonderful. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure getting to know you. It's been a pleasure being part of the show. I feel even more connected to Penn than I did yesterday. And thank you for having me. It's been a bunch of fun.
All right. Well, thank you to our audience for joining us as well. As always, this has been Changing Reality. And we appreciate each and every single one of you listening in. Do get in touch if you have questions. Bye.
You're listening to Changing Reality. Changing Reality, where we bend reality all across the world. Only on WQHS Radio.